The champagne flute slipped from my trembling fingers as my father's words echoed through our family's marble dining room. The penthouse goes to Madison, of course. My sister's triumphant smile felt like a knife twisting in my chest. 26 years of being the perfect daughter, and I watched everything I had worked for handed to her on a silver platter. But then my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed my father's business partner, and his whispered words changed everything. Aurelia, your father doesn't know I'm calling, but you need to know the truth about that inheritance. Meet me tomorrow. Your sister has been lying to everyone. Hey, amazing viewers. Before we dive into this wild family betrayal story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? Smash that like button if you're ready for some serious family karma, and don't forget to subscribe, because this revenge story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you will not see what's coming next. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning as Richard's cryptic warning replayed in my mind. The next morning, I met him at a small coffee shop across town, far from our usual upscale neighborhood, where someone might recognize us. Richard had been my father's business partner for 15 years, a man I had always respected for his integrity and straightforward manner. Aurelia, he began, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug. What I'm about to tell you will destroy your family. Are you sure you want to know? I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. I need to know the truth. Richard pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Your sister Madison has been embezzling money from your father's company for the past 3 years. Not just small amounts. We're talking about $2.7 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Madison, my perfectionist sister, who had always been Daddy's golden child, the one who graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School and seemed incapable of doing anything wrong. How? I whispered. She's been creating fake vendor contracts and routing payments to offshore accounts she controls. She's also been manipulating the quarterly reports to hide the missing funds. Your father has no idea because Madison handles most of the financial oversight now. Richard spread out bank statements, invoices, and email printouts across the small table. The evidence was overwhelming. Payment authorizations in Madison's handwriting email chains where she discussed handling discrepancies, and most damning of all, photographs of her depositing checks at a bank where neither she nor the company had accounts. But why are you telling me this? I asked, still struggling to process the magnitude of her betrayal. Because yesterday, when your father announced the inheritance distribution, I realized what her endgame was. She's been positioning herself as the responsible daughter, the one who deserves the family business and assets. Meanwhile, you've been painted as the flighty artist who can't handle serious responsibility. That stung, because it was exactly how my family saw me. Despite my successful graphic design business and financial stability, I was still treated like the dreamy younger daughter who needed guidance. Richard, there's something else, he continued, his voice dropping even lower. The penthouse your father gave her. The down payment came from the embezzled funds. She's essentially stolen her own inheritance gift. I felt sick, not just because of the financial fraud, but because of the elaborate deception Madison had been orchestrating for years. Every family dinner where she sympathetically listened to Dad complain about unexpected expenses, every board meeting where she presented solutions to problems she had created, every moment she consoled him about the business's declining profits while secretly draining its accounts. What about the rest of the inheritance? I asked. If this continues, there won't be much left. She's been accelerating the theft recently, probably planning to disappear once the major assets are transferred to her name. Your father's life work, your family's generational wealth, it's all going to vanish. Richard handed me copies of everything. I tried to approach your father months ago, but Madison convinced him I was becoming paranoid in my old age. She suggested he might want to consider a younger business partner. The manipulation went even deeper than I had imagined. Madison had not only been stealing from the company, but systematically isolating anyone who might discover her crimes. Why haven't you gone to the police? I asked. I need more than circumstantial evidence. Madison is brilliant. She's covered her tracks well. We need irrefutable proof, and we need to catch her in the act. That's where you come in. He explained that Madison was planning a major transfer next week, nearly $800,000 disguised as a payment to a construction company for penthouse renovations that weren't actually happening. If we can document this transaction and connect it to her accounts, we'll have everything we need. But I can't do this alone. She trusts you, Aurelia. You're the only one who can get close enough to gather the evidence we need. I stared at the documents spread across the table, feeling the weight of betrayal and responsibility crushing down on me. My sister, who had hugged me at dinner last night and promised we would always be close, despite the inheritance disparity, had been systematically destroying our family for years. "What exactly do you need me to do?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Richard smiled grimly. "We're going to set a trap, and Madison is going to walk right into it." The next 2 weeks were the most difficult of my life. I had to sit across from Madison at family dinners, smile when she talked about her penthouse renovations, and pretend everything was normal while gathering evidence of her massive fraud. Richard and I developed a careful strategy that required me to become someone I had never been before: a detective. Madison had always underestimated me, viewing me as the artistic dreamer who couldn't possibly understand complex financial matters. This worked to our advantage. When I started asking innocent questions about the family business, she was eager to share information, probably thinking she was educating her naive little sister. "Oh, Aurelia, you wouldn't understand the complexities of corporate finance," she would say with that condescending smile I was beginning to hate. "Daddy and I handle all the serious business matters." But I was learning fast. Richard taught me how to read financial statements, identify suspicious transactions, and recognize the patterns in Madison's embezzlement scheme. We discovered that she had been using 3 different fake companies to funnel money out of our father's business. Each company had legitimate-sounding names and official documentation, but they were all registered to addresses that led back to Madison's control. The breakthrough came when I volunteered to help Madison with her penthouse decorating. She was so confident in her deception that she actually showed me the invoices for her renovations, the same invoices Richard had identified as fraudulent payments. "The contractors are so expensive," she sighed dramatically. "But Daddy insisted I spare no expense in making it perfect." I photographed everything when she stepped away to take a phone call. Invoice numbers, amounts, company names. All the evidence Richard needed to prove the connection between the fake payments and Madison's personal expenses. But our real target was the upcoming major transfer. Richard had discovered that Madison was planning to move $800,000 the following Friday, disguised as a payment to Prestige Construction Solutions for extensive penthouse modifications that existed only on paper. "We need to catch her making the transfer," Richard explained during one of our clandestine meetings, "with documentation showing her personally authorizing the payment and evidence that the receiving company is under her control." The plan was risky. I would need to be in Madison's office during the transfer with a hidden camera to record her actions. Richard would simultaneously be gathering documentation from the bank about the receiving account. That Friday morning, I arrived at the family business building with coffee and pastries, playing the role of the thoughtful sister bringing treats for the hard-working Madison. "You're so sweet," she said, completely unsuspecting, as I set up my phone to record from behind a stack of folders on her desk. I watched my sister methodically execute the largest single theft of her criminal career. She logged into the company's banking system using Dad's credentials, which she had obviously obtained without his knowledge. Her fingers moved confidently across the keyboard as she authorized the massive payment to her fake construction company. "Just handling some business expenses," she murmured when she noticed me watching. But I caught everything. Her face clearly visible as she made the transfer, the computer screen showing the transaction details, her satisfied smile when the payment was confirmed. Richard was right. She was brilliant at covering her tracks, but her overconfidence had finally created the opening we needed. 20 minutes after Madison completed the transfer, my phone rang. "Aurelia." Richard's voice was tense with excitement. "We have everything we need." The receiving account is registered to a shell company that Madison created using a fake business address. I have bank records, corporate filings, and now your video evidence of her making the transfer. That afternoon, Richard and I went to the police together. Detective Sarah Morrison listened carefully as we presented our evidence, her expression growing more serious with each document Richard placed before her. "This is sophisticated financial fraud," she said finally. "The evidence appears comprehensive, but I need to verify everything before we can proceed with arrests. We're talking about multiple felony charges here." The investigation moved quickly once law enforcement became involved. Within 72 hours, police had traced Madison's fake companies, frozen her offshore accounts, and discovered the full scope of her embezzlement. The total amount stolen was even higher than Richard had estimated. Over $3.2 million spanning 4 years of systematic theft. But Madison was not going to go down quietly. When Detective Morrison called to inform me that they were ready to make arrests, she also delivered an unexpected warning. "Be careful, Aurelia. Your sister has been asking questions about who might have reported her. She's smart enough to realize this information had to come from someone with inside access to the company. You could be in danger." Detective Morrison's warning proved prophetic. Madison had indeed figured out that someone close to the family had exposed her crimes, and she was systematically investigating everyone with access to the financial information. What I didn't anticipate was how ruthlessly she would fight back, or how many people she had already compromised in her web of deception. The first sign of trouble came when Richard called me in a panic Tuesday morning. "Aurelia Madison somehow found out about our meetings. She's been spreading rumors that I've been embezzling money from the company and trying to frame her to cover my own crimes. Your father is furious with me and talking about pressing charges." My heart sank. Madison was using the same manipulative tactics that had allowed her to steal millions, turn family members against each other, and position herself as the victim. She had always been masterful at playing innocent while orchestrating chaos behind the scenes. "We have evidence, Richard. The police have everything we need. Evidence that could be explained away if people believe I fabricated it to frame her," he replied grimly. "Madison is telling everyone that I've been jealous of her success and trying to undermine her relationship with your father. She's very convincing." This was when I realized I had underestimated my sister's cunning. She wasn't just a financial criminal. She was a master manipulator who could turn any situation to her advantage. Fighting her would require more than evidence. I needed allies who could see through her deception. That's when I remembered Elena Vasquez. Elena had been our family's accountant for 12 years before Madison convinced Dad to replace her with a newer firm that offered more modern financial strategies. At the time, I thought it was just another business decision, but now I wondered if Elena had discovered something that threatened Madison's schemes. I found Elena working at a small accounting firm across town. When I explained why I was there, her reaction was immediate and intense. "I knew something was wrong with those books," she said, her voice tight with vindication. "Madison pushed me out because I was asking too many questions about discrepancies I kept finding. Your father wouldn't listen when I tried to warn him." Elena had detailed notes from her time managing our family's finances, including suspicious transactions she had flagged before being dismissed. More importantly, she had maintained copies of financial records that showed the company's true performance before Madison's embezzlement accelerated. "The business was actually growing steadily until 3 years ago," Elena explained, spreading out charts and graphs across her desk. "Madison has been telling your father that market conditions caused the decline in profits, but the real problem was money disappearing from accounts." Elena agreed to work with us, but she also introduced me to 2 other crucial allies, Marcus Webb, a forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud cases, and Jennifer Cole, an attorney who had successfully prosecuted several high-profile embezzlement cases. Marcus was particularly valuable because he could present financial evidence in ways that were undeniable even to people who wanted to believe Madison's version of events. "Your sister is sophisticated," he said after reviewing all our documentation, "but every financial criminal leaves patterns. I can trace every dollar she stole and show exactly how she manipulated the accounting to hide the theft. Jennifer focused on the legal strategy. The challenge isn't proving the crimes. The evidence is solid. The challenge is overcoming the emotional manipulation she's been using on your family for years. We need to present this case in a way that makes her guilt undeniable. But our alliance faced its first major test when Madison made an unexpected move. She convinced our father to call a family meeting, claiming she had discovered evidence that Richard and I were conspiring to frame her for crimes we had actually committed ourselves. Aurelia has always been jealous of my success, she told Dad, tears streaming down her face in a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Now she's recruited Richard to help her destroy me. They've been forging documents and creating fake evidence. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening at our family's main house. Everyone would be there. Mom, Dad, Madison, myself, and even my younger brother Marcus, who was flying in from college. Madison had chosen the setting carefully. She knew that in front of the entire family, her emotional manipulation would be most effective. Elena, Marcus, and Jennifer helped me prepare for what would essentially be a trial. We organized evidence into presentations that even non-experts could understand, prepared responses to Madison's likely accusations, and developed a strategy for revealing the truth without giving her opportunities to deflect or confuse the issues. Remember, Jennifer advised, she's going to try to make this about family loyalty versus outside influences. She'll paint you as the daughter who chose strangers over blood. Don't let her control the narrative. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the family dinners where Madison had sat across from me, all the sisterly conversations we had shared, all the moments I had trusted her completely. Had any of it been real, or had she been manipulating me my entire life? Marcus called me early Saturday morning with news that changed everything. Aurelia, we've discovered something else. Madison didn't just steal money from the company. She's been manipulating your father's personal investments too. She convinced him to move his retirement funds into accounts she controls. If we don't stop her immediately, she'll steal everything your parents have saved their entire lives. The stakes had just become much higher. This wasn't just about recovering stolen company funds. It was about protecting my parents' financial future. Madison wasn't planning to stop with the business assets. She intended to take everything. That evening, as I walked into our family's dining room carrying folders of evidence that would destroy my sister's life, I realized that some betrayals cut so deep they change you forever. Madison had taught me that family loyalty could be weaponized, that love could be manipulated, and that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of the greatest cruelty. But she had also taught me something else, that justice requires courage. That protecting innocent people sometimes means exposing painful truths, and that real family isn't defined by blood, but by who stands with you when everything falls apart. The war was about to begin, and I was finally ready to fight. The family meeting began exactly as I had anticipated. Madison sat at the head of our dining room table, perfectly composed in her designer dress, with tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands that screamed victimhood. She had arranged the seating strategically, Mom and Dad flanking her protectively, while I sat across from them like a defendant facing judgment. Before we begin, Madison said, her voice shaking with practiced emotion, I want everyone to know how much it hurts me to discover that my own sister has been plotting against me. Aurelia, I loved you. I trusted you. How could you do this to our family? I had prepared for this moment, but hearing those words still felt like a physical blow. She was using our genuine history of sisterly affection as a weapon, turning every shared memory into ammunition for her defense. Madison, we need to look at the evidence. I began opening my folder of documents. Forged evidence, she interrupted quickly. Created by people who want to destroy our family business and steal what rightfully belongs to us. Dad's face was already hardening against me. Mom looked confused and hurt. My brother Marcus seemed torn between disbelief and anger. Madison had spent weeks preparing them for this moment, priming them to see me as the traitor. But I had Elena, Jennifer, and Marcus Webb on my side. Or so I thought. Elena was supposed to arrive at 7:30 to present the financial evidence. When she didn't show up by 8 o'clock, I started to worry. When Jennifer called to tell me Elena wasn't answering her phone, I knew something was terribly wrong. "I think we should wait for Elena," I said, stalling for time. Madison's smile was triumphant. "Oh, Aurelia, didn't you hear Elena called me this afternoon? She wanted to apologize for being manipulated into helping with your scheme. She realized that her professional reputation could be destroyed if she participated in presenting fabricated evidence." The words hit me like ice water. Elena had betrayed me. The woman who had been so angry about being pushed out of our family's business, who had seemed so determined to expose Madison's crimes, had switched sides at the last minute. "That's impossible," I stammered. "She was very upset." Madison continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "She explained how you and Richard had pressured her, how you had threatened to ruin her new business if she didn't cooperate with your plan to frame me. She felt terrible about being drawn into such a vindictive scheme." I looked around the table at my family's faces. They believed her. Every single one of them believed Madison's version of events because it was easier than accepting that their golden child was a criminal. Marcus Webb had also mysteriously disappeared. Jennifer was still planning to come, but without Elena's financial expertise and Marcus's forensic analysis, our case had been severely weakened. Madison pressed her advantage. "Aurelia, I know you've been struggling financially with your little art business. I understand that seeing me receive the penthouse made you feel left out. But destroying our family won't solve your problems." "My business is successful," I protested. "Is it?" Madison pulled out a folder of her own. "Because I have documentation showing that you've been borrowing money from Richard for months. He's been helping you pay your rent and business expenses while you pretend to be independent and successful." This was news to me, and the shock must have shown on my face. Madison had somehow manufactured evidence of financial dependence that didn't exist. But the documents she presented looked official and convincing. "Richard has been telling you that I'm the problem," she continued, "because he doesn't want you to know that he's been embezzling money to support your failing business. You're not his accomplice. You're his victim. He's been using you to distract from his own crimes." The manipulation was breathtaking in its complexity. Madison had not only turned Elena against me, but had also created an entirely fictional narrative that painted Richard as the real criminal and me as his unwitting pawn. Dad's voice was cold when he finally spoke. "Aurelia, I'm disappointed in you. I thought we raised you to be better than this." "You did," I said desperately. "Please, just look at the bank records. Look at the transaction patterns. The evidence is all there." "Evidence that Richard could have fabricated," Madison said sadly. "Evidence that Elena now admits was manipulated to support false accusations." Mom was crying now. "How did our family come to this? How did we get to the point where sisters are destroying each other?" It was the perfect question for Madison to answer. Because some people would rather tear down others than build themselves up. Because some people think they deserve what they haven't earned. Jennifer finally arrived, but without Elena and Marcus, her legal arguments fell flat. The family saw her as another outsider who had been recruited to attack Madison, and they dismissed her presentation before she could finish. As the meeting dissolved into accusations and tears, I realized that Madison had outmaneuvered me completely. She had anticipated my strategy, neutralized my allies, and turned my own evidence against me. Worse, she had used the meeting to further cement her position as the victim and mine as the villain. "I think Aurelia should leave," Dad said finally. "Until she's ready to apologize and make amends for this vendetta, she's not welcome in this house." I gathered my useless documents and walked out of my childhood home, feeling more alone and defeated than ever before. Madison had won this round decisively, and I had no idea how to recover from such a comprehensive betrayal. But as I sat in my car outside the house where I had grown up, I made a decision. Madison might have won this battle, but she had also revealed something crucial about herself. She was so confident in her ability to manipulate people that she had become reckless. Her story about Elena and Richard was too complicated, too convenient. She had overplayed her hand. And somewhere out there, Detective Morrison was still building a criminal case based on evidence that Madison couldn't manipulate away. The family meeting might have been a disaster, but the legal system would be different. Their facts mattered more than emotions, and evidence spoke louder than tears. Madison had taught me never to underestimate her ability to manipulate people's hearts. But she was about to learn that she had underestimated my ability to fight back. The week following the disastrous family meeting was the darkest period of my life. Madison's manipulation had been so thorough that I questioned everything I thought I knew about the situation. Had Richard actually been embezzling money? Was Elena telling the truth about being pressured? Had I been so desperate to explain away my own failures that I had created an elaborate conspiracy theory? But Detective Morrison's phone call Wednesday morning changed everything. "Aurelia, we need to meet immediately. I have information that's going to shock you, but it also gives us everything we need to end this." I met her at the same coffee shop where Richard had first told me about Madison's crimes. Detective Morrison looked exhausted but determined as she spread out a new collection of documents across our table. "First, I need to tell you about Elena Vasquez," she began. "She didn't betray you willingly. Madison threatened to have her deported." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Elena's immigration status has some complications from years ago. Madison discovered this and threatened to report Elena to immigration authorities if she testified against her. Elena was terrified of being separated from her children, so she agreed to recant her statement and disappear." The cruelty of Madison's manipulation was breathtaking. She had found Elena's greatest vulnerability and weaponized it without hesitation. "But here's what Madison doesn't know," Detective Morrison continued. "Elena recorded her conversation with Madison when she made those threats. She was so angry about being coerced that she wanted documentation of Madison's intimidation tactics. She played the recording on her phone. Madison's voice was crystal clear as she threatened Elena's family and immigration status, demanding that Elena refuse to cooperate with law enforcement. "This recording proves that Madison has been obstructing justice and witness intimidation," Detective Morrison explained. "But that's not even the most important thing I discovered." She handed me a photograph that made my blood run cold. It showed Madison meeting with a man I didn't recognize, but the location was familiar: the parking lot of Richard's office building. Madison has been systematically destroying everyone who could expose her crimes. She hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Richard, Elena, and even you, but her investigator made a mistake. Detective Morrison explained that Madison's private investigator, David Torres, had been conducting illegal surveillance and creating false evidence to support Madison's counter-accusations. But Torres had also been documenting everything he did for Madison, including recordings of their planning sessions. Torres got arrested last week on an unrelated case. When he realized he was facing serious prison time, he decided to cooperate with authorities. He turned over everything he had on Madison, including recordings of her instructing him to fabricate evidence and intimidate witnesses. The recordings were devastating. Madison's voice planning the destruction of Elena's immigration status, discussing how to frame Richard for embezzlement, and worst of all, laughing about how easily she had manipulated our family's emotions during the confrontation meeting. "There's more," Detective Morrison said. "Torres also recorded Madison admitting to crimes we didn't even know about. She's been stealing from your father's personal accounts for over 2 years. The retirement funds, the college savings for your brother, even your mother's jewelry insurance payouts. Madison has been taking everything." But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Detective Morrison handed me a final recording that made my hands shake as I listened. "Your father isn't Madison's biological father," she said quietly. "Madison discovered this through a DNA test she took secretly, and she's been using that knowledge to justify stealing from the family. In her mind, she's not really committing crimes against family members because you're not really her family." The recording captured Madison explaining her twisted logic to Torres. She had convinced herself that since she wasn't biologically related to our father, she had no moral obligation to respect his property or our family's financial security. Every dollar she stole was justified in her mind as taking what she deserved from people who weren't really her relatives. "Does Dad know?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No, and Madison has been holding this secret as a nuclear option. If anyone got too close to exposing her crimes, she planned to reveal the paternity issue and destroy your family from the inside out." Detective Morrison's next words changed everything. "But we have an unexpected ally. Your father's business partner Richard has been working undercover with us for the past month. He never betrayed anyone. He's been helping us build an airtight case against Madison." Richard appeared at our table as if summoned by her words. His face was grim but determined. "I'm sorry we couldn't tell you," he said. "But after Madison tried to frame me for her crimes, Detective Morrison approached me about working with law enforcement. We've been documenting everything Madison does, every lie she tells, every person she tries to manipulate." He explained that Madison's attempt to turn the family against me had actually been recorded by surveillance equipment the police had placed in our family's house with Richard's help. "We have video evidence of Madison practicing her emotional breakdown before the family meeting," Richard said. "We have recordings of her coaching Elena on what to say. We even have documentation of her paying Torres to create false evidence against me. But the most powerful ally was someone I never expected: my own brother, Marcus." "Marcus has been suspicious of Madison for months," Detective Morrison explained. "He contacted us after the family meeting because something about Madison's story didn't make sense to him. My younger brother had always been the most observant member of our family. While everyone else was swept away by Madison's emotional manipulation, Marcus had noticed inconsistencies in her accusations and timeline problems in her version of events. Marcus has been gathering evidence from inside the family," Richard said. "He's documented conversations where Madison contradicted herself, and he's discovered documents in her room that prove she's been planning this manipulation campaign for weeks." The case against Madison was now overwhelming. Financial crimes, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, fraud, and extortion. She had committed so many crimes while trying to cover up her original embezzlement that the evidence against her was undeniable. "We're ready to make arrests," Detective Morrison said. "But first, we want to give your family the chance to see the truth for themselves. Tomorrow morning, we're going to present all of this evidence to your parents. After that, Madison will be arrested and charged with multiple felonies." As I walked back to my car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the truth would finally come out, sadness that my sister was capable of such elaborate cruelty, and gratitude for the unexpected allies who had fought for justice when it seemed impossible. Madison had taught me that family could betray you in the most devastating ways. But she had also taught me that family could surprise you with loyalty and courage when it mattered most. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes everything feel possible. Detective Morrison, Richard, Marcus, and I met at our family's house to present the evidence that would finally expose Madison's elaborate criminal enterprise. Mom and Dad were confused about why we had requested this meeting, but they agreed to listen. Madison arrived 30 minutes late, perfectly composed and radiating the confident charm that had fooled everyone for years. She kissed Dad's cheek and squeezed Mom's hand, playing the role of the devoted daughter one last time. "I hope this isn't another attempt to spread lies about me," she said, looking directly at me with eyes that promised revenge. Detective Morrison began with the financial evidence. Bank records, transaction histories, and forensic accounting reports that traced every dollar Madison had stolen over 4 years. The numbers were staggering: $4.7 million taken from the family business, plus another $1.2 million stolen from Dad's personal accounts. "This is fabricated," Madison said smoothly. "Anyone can create fake documents these days." But then Detective Morrison played the recordings. Madison's voice filled our family's living room as she instructed Torres to threaten Elena's family. Her laughter as she described manipulating our emotions during the confrontation meeting. Her cold calculation as she planned to destroy Richard's reputation to protect herself. Mom's face went white. Dad sat in stunned silence. Madison's composure finally cracked as she realized the scope of evidence against her. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "I was protecting this family, the business was failing, and someone had to make difficult decisions. By stealing millions of dollars." Dad's voice was barely controlled fury. But the most devastating moment came when Detective Morrison played the recording where Madison discussed the paternity secret. Her voice was clinical and detached as she explained how discovering she wasn't biologically related to Dad had freed her from any moral obligations to the family. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And Madison was staring at the floor, finally understanding that her elaborate house of lies had completely collapsed. "Madison Harper, you are under arrest for embezzlement fraud, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice," Detective Morrison said, producing handcuffs. As Madison was led away, she looked back at me with pure hatred. "You destroyed this family," she hissed. "I hope you're proud of yourself." But I wasn't the one who had destroyed anything. Madison had torn apart our family's trust, stolen our financial security, and manipulated everyone who loved her. I had simply refused to let her get away with it. The legal proceedings moved quickly after that. Madison's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was so overwhelming that prosecutors refused to reduce the charges. She was ultimately sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution for the stolen funds. The recovery process was more complex than the prosecution. Dad had to rebuild his business from the ground up, working with forensic accountants to untangle Madison's web of false transactions and hidden accounts. It took 8 months, but most of the stolen money was eventually recovered through seizure of Madison's assets and the offshore accounts she had used to hide her crimes. Mom struggled the most with the emotional aftermath. She had genuinely loved Madison and felt betrayed not just by the crimes, but by the years of manipulation. "How could I not see it?" she asked me repeatedly. "How could I be so blind to what she was doing?" But healing came through the relationships that had been strengthened by surviving Madison's betrayal. Richard became more than just Dad's business partner. He became a trusted family friend who had risked everything to protect us. Elena returned to work as our family's accountant, and her immigration status was resolved with help from Jennifer's legal contacts. My relationship with my parents transformed completely. They finally saw me as the responsible, capable adult I had always been, rather than the dreamy younger daughter who needed guidance. Dad asked me to join the family business as chief financial officer, a position I accepted with pride and determination. Marcus proved himself to be the most perceptive member of our family, and his courage in questioning Madison's lies, when everyone else was fooled, earned him everyone's respect and gratitude. But perhaps most importantly, I learned that family isn't defined by blood relationships or inherited obligations. It's defined by who stands with you when everything falls apart, who fights for truth, even when it's painful, and who chooses loyalty over convenience. Elena, Jennifer, Detective Morrison, and Marcus Webb had all become part of my chosen family through their willingness to fight for justice. They had proven that sometimes strangers care more about your well-being than people who share your DNA. The penthouse that Madison had received as her inheritance was sold to help pay restitution to Dad's business. With my share of the recovered funds, I was able to expand my graphic design business and buy a beautiful house where I host monthly dinners for the people who truly matter in my life. Madison writes letters from prison occasionally, still trying to manipulate and blame others for the consequences of her choices. I don't respond. Some bridges are burned so completely that they can never be rebuilt, and some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness isn't possible or necessary. But every day I'm grateful for the painful lesson she taught me about the difference between family you're born with and family you choose. Real love doesn't require blood relation, and real loyalty isn't defined by shared genetics. It's defined by character integrity and the willingness to do the right thing even when it costs you something. So here's my question for all of you watching. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the courage to fight back when everything seemed hopeless? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help other people realize they're not alone in dealing with family manipulation and betrayal. If this story resonated with you, please smash that like button to help other people find it. Stories like this need to be shared because someone out there is probably dealing with similar betrayal right now and needs to know that justice is possible. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about standing up to manipulation and finding your chosen family. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve better than toxic family dynamics. Thank you for watching and for supporting people who choose truth over comfortable lies. Remember that you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. Don't let anyone convince you that you have to accept betrayal just because it comes from family. You have the power to choose who gets to be part of your story, and you deserve people who will fight for you the same way you fight for them. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and never stop believing that you deserve better.